We talk now with Daniel Kovalik, International Human Rights Professor at Pittsburgh University. Welcome to From the South. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
All ours. Kovalik, can we see a parallel scenario between the situation now in Cuba and the scam used to try to pass supposed humanitarian aid to Venezuela in 2019? This is my first question.
Yeah, well, I think we see the same type of regime change tactics that the U.S., as you say, has used in Venezuela, is still using in Venezuela, is using in Nicaragua, is using in Cuba. The U.S. denies these countries access to very important goods, medicines, food, etc., and then it offers some, minimal amount of humanitarian aid, so-called, in order to try to coax the people of these countries into overthrowing their governments. This is classic. In the case of Venezuela, there was an internal U.S. government review which in fact concluded that the humanitarian aid offered to Venezuela in 2018 was purely politically motivated for the purpose of regime change. And again, I think we're seeing similar things happening now in Cuba.
Against Cuba, are we seeing that?
Is extreme sanctions against Cuba, which are causing deprivation and suffering amongst the Cuban people. And now the U.S. is trying to blame Cuba for those problems. And it's trying to provoke an insurrection in that country. And we're seeing some of that come to fruition at present.
Yes, we are listening. Professor Kovalik, are you listening to us?
Yes.
I have a next question for you. President Joe Biden has asked Cuban government to listen its people, but what happened with U.S. government that every year ignores the world's petition to end the blockade?
Right. I mean, what the U.S. is doing is essentially coercing the Cuban people. What it's really saying, it's not really, the sanctions are not aimed at the Cuban government, they're aimed at the Cuban people. And what Biden is essentially saying to the Cuban people is that unless they overthrow their government, these sanctions will continue and they will continue to suffer. The U.S. will settle for nothing but complete regime change in Cuba. That has been the position of the U.S. government, whether under Republicans or Democrats, since the 1959 revolution.
Dr. Kovalik, thank you so much for your opinions, for teleSUR, and your time also.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.